So today we'll be talking about the financing mechanism for Indonesia's FOLU Netsing 2030. So to overcome the challenge of biodiversity loss and climate change, everyone needs to put some efforts in preserving healthy terrestrial and marine ecosystem. However, the investment to shift to low carbon world is not cheap. So what's the strategy to fill the gap in funding in order to address the global challenge? To start with, let's welcome our moderator for the session, Pak Zahrul. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbak Mone. Distinguished guests, as also distinguished speakers. I'm Muhammad Zahrul Mutakin. For those who has not been here since the beginning of this pavilion. Yes, today we will have a very interesting topic, okay? You know, the forestry and land use netting 2030 is basically our commitment, our new commitment, our ambition, rising ambition for achieving net zero emission by 2060. So the question is, how can we finance the action for implementing FOLU 2030 to achieve our long-term goal through LTS LCCR? That's why we have here 4 distinguished speakers to discuss about this issue. First, I would like to invite Mr. Nur Ullah, the Senior Investment Specialist from Asian Development Bank. Oh, he will be online. Sorry. He will be online. So in Indonesia, if we go online, we have something like, okay, good. Hadirin and hadir out. Hadir in mean hadir here, hadir out mean hadir but online. Something like that. Okay, the second speakers will be Ms. Mukti Hasuyahmun, the Executive Director of the Indonesian Research Institute for Decarbonization, IRID. Please, Mbak Kuki, come to the stage. Applause for Mbak Kuki. The third speaker will be Mr. Silverius Oscar Unggur from Kadin. Mas Onte, please come to the stage. Applause to Pak Onte. And last but not least, I invite Ms. Lucita Yasmin, the Director for Sustainability and External Affairs of April. Please come to the stage. Okay, thank you. We already have all the speakers here. Then for the first opportunity, I would like to invite Mr. Nur Ullah, the Senior Investment Specialist from Asian Development Bank, to take the floor. So, Mr. Nur Ullah, can you hear me? Hello? Sorry, we haven't heard your voice.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay then. Yes, we can hear you well. Okay then, Mr. Nur Ullah, screen is yours, please.
Okay, excellent. So thank you so much for inviting me to this panel discussion. It's quite pertinent from an ADB perspective. I'd just like to share a few thoughts using a couple of these slides in terms of ADB's work in the nature-based solutions space. The first slide, I'll share 2 case studies on our recent investments in nature-based solutions. And then I'll share some thoughts on, what we see as key challenges and opportunities in the sector. And I'm sure those would be relevant in the Indonesian context as well. So let me start off by sharing 2 examples of nature-based investments that ADB has recently made. The first example is in a company named Australis in Vietnam. Australis is the largest producer of barramundi fish in the world. I guess many of you would be familiar with the fact that barramundi is one of the more resilient fish varieties out there. So Australis basically produces barramundi in ocean pens, which are much less vulnerable to climate change than land-based aquaculture systems. Not only that, the company is also producing seaweed, which, when mixed as part of cattle feed, can significantly reduce methane emissions. So ADB supported the company. We're providing a convertible note to fund the working capital needs of the company to help it expand its barramundi fish production. We've also provided a grant funding to support the company's development of its seaweed product, both the R&D and the commercialization of it. So it's a blended capital structure that we've used for this investment. The idea is to promote ocean-based aquaculture as an alternative to land-based aquaculture systems, which is much more resource intensive and also much less resilient to climate change. The next example I want to quickly share is actually from Indonesia. This is a company named DSNG. It's a listed company. It's one of the leaders in sustainable wood processing. The company essentially sources wood from smallholder farmers that practice multi-storied agroforestry systems which act as a buffer against climate change. The company also actively supports intercropping of crops like coffee, rice, and maize to help farmers diversify their income sources. So ADB has provided a sustainability linked loan to help the company expand its wood processing capacity. We are also providing a TA, a grant of about $500,000 to help the training and capacity building of these agroforestry farmers to make them more resilient to the challenge of climate change. Again, the idea being to promote sustainable agroforestry initiatives. Just quickly, in terms of challenges and opportunities, and maybe we can cover this in more detail in our discussion as well. But just to touch upon some of the key high-level thoughts, I think the principal challenge that we face is that the space is still fairly nascent. In terms of pipeline, we see a handful of bankable projects that come our way. And just to clarify, it's not that there aren't a lot of there isn't a lot of work happening in this space. I see multiple projects land on my desk on a weekly basis, but the key word is bankable. We don't see enough strong sponsors with operating history, with proven track record, pushing the needle in this space. We're seeing some, but we need to see a lot more. I think the other challenge is that the returns in the sector can be low and can be uncertain, which then leads to private capital shying away from these projects. And these projects often require long tenor capital, which again can be an impediment for private capital. In terms of opportunities, I think we certainly need more technical assistance, capital in this space to help with project and pipeline development. We need more blended finance solutions to de-risk investments, solutions like guarantee structures, first loss structures to really crowd in private capital. And then we need a lot more work in the standardization in investing in monitoring and reporting systems when we talk about nature-based solutions. I will just stop here and conclude that, this is an area of deep interest from an ADB perspective. We're actively working with our partners in the private sector to support their initiatives and are quite keen on the Indonesian market, particularly when it comes to agroforestry systems. But I'll pause here and pass it over to Mr. Zarullah. Thank you.
Thank you. Applause for Mr. Nurullah. Thank you, Mr. Nurullah, for the presentation about the natural capital investment, and we already heard about the challenge, especially for the bankability. But there are also opportunities that you can explore more, like next in the discussion. Next, I would like to invite. I need to spell Ms. Mukti Hasuyakmun because I only know Mbak Kuki. So Mbak Kuki, please, floor is yours, Mbak.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, moderator and everyone here. So as like the title or the topic that I will be trying to discuss here is on how to unlock the green financing in Indonesia, and especially if we are talking about the relation with the nature, and we are talking about Net FOLU 2030. I think if we are talking about the Net FOLU 2030, then there are a number of elements. First, of course, we need clear policies and regulations. And then we need support means of implementation, which will include, like basically financing for sure. But there are also technologies and the role of the people. So I think we cannot, lose any of that. And if we are looking at the Paris Agreement, then it says that basically developed countries are the one that need to, provide and mobilize support, financial support for developing countries, but it's also open for developing countries and other entities to support such activities. And I think this is a big opportunity also for Indonesia in this case to have our own domestic financing. And if we are talking about financing, for sure, we're going to talk about two things. The first one is the non-market approaches, and the second one is the market approaches. Talking about the domestic financing or the domestic market, we already have this ministerial regulation, the MOEF regulation number 7/2023, that already there basically you have all these rules on how such thing will be implemented in the forest-related and land use sector. And I think this is a great opportunity also, not only to talk about what happened within the forest and land use, but also how this sector can help other sectors. Because there are a number of sectors that are hard to abate, and they need, a kind of offset from this sector. And my task is on talking about how to unlock, right, the green financing. I think Mr. Nurullah earlier already mentioned also about, the issues here. I think it's gap between the financing sectors and the project or program on the ground. It means that, if we are talking about the financial sectors, usually they have their own, if I can say, rules and procedures on how you can get financing. And sometimes it's not really linked with what happened in the sector itself. So I think what we need there is also, and also mentioned earlier by Mr. Nurullah, we need to have like a session or capacity building to the financing sectors as well, so that they can understand how it is, all the challenges that being faced by the sectors. And on the other hand, I think the sectors itself and all the players in the sectors, they also need to learn more how to prepare a good proposals that bankable so that they can be supported by the financial institution. And the other thing is also talking about how to get the access. There are a number of different, talking about loan, for example, there are a number of different levels of that. But also we are also talking about one of the now becoming more and more, I think, important is blended finance, right? So if we are talking about blended finance, then we need also to, I think, understand that blended finance is not only about the finance. I mean, like at least from my own perspective, but we also need to think of the community as well, how to include and involve the community in the implementation of the project. Because if you are talking about forests, I think we have to talk beyond carbon benefit, right? There are quite a number of co-benefit, be it to the environment, to biodiversity, but also to the people. I think so local economy is something that I think projects related to follow sync activities, they need to be able to address that as well. So I think in short, how to unlock this is basically build the capacity of all stakeholders, be it the financial institution, the project, but also the people on the ground. So thanks, Mas.
Thank you, Mbak Goki. Very inspiring talk. We already heard about how to expand. Yes, you talk about the expanding green market, green investment ecosystem in Indonesia. So the key is like in enhancing the capacity, such as in a blended finance. Next, I would like to invite Pak Onte to talk about how can you encourage Kadin members to invest in nature, to finance, for example, the mechanism to finance the FOLU netting, for example. Please, Pak.
Thank you. I will explain what we doing in Kadin to implement, try to implement this. As you know, the government give us opportunity with the Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja. We have multi-usaha kehutanan, multi-purpose forestry businesses. So, and in Kadin we try to capture this opportunity. We are doing together. First, we understand the capacity of our members. There are several companies already do this good, and the others really want to do. So we think about how to exchange the experience between Kadin members. That's why in Kadin we built one hub, we call it Regenerative Forest Business Hub. Try to understand better this opportunity and make learning together between Kadin members. And also in Kadin, I think Kadin together with our partners doing the penelitian, the research about what's the potential of the community. So we do a long research. We try to understand global market about the commodity, and then the research also combined with the potential of our members, where and how many land we have, etc. And then we come up with several community. This community we believe will be good for us to invest. We're talking about the commodity, but also we're talking about the regenerative commodity, because we know exactly there are many big brands in the world already pledged to implement the SBTI Scope 3, for example. If they are pledged for Scope 3 of SBTI standard, it means even for the sources, must be net zero, right? So if the company produce the coffee or the cocoa product, if they scope 3, it means they need sourcing from cocoa net zero. That's a big opportunity for Indonesia because we now, in several our members' concession, we know there are still, of course, there are still good forests we can manage with timber, but several places also need to reforestation. So if we do reforestation, we combine between trees and agro. Maybe we plant coffee together, cocoa, vanilla, and others. And then we saw this is a big opportunity because by the reset, by the reset of the Kadin, only talking these three commodity, cocoa, coffee, and vanilla by regenerative way. This will be a next CPO for Indonesia. But of course we know we are produce a huge of CPO, but sometimes we question for the world say many things. I do believe this many politics also. But with doing regenerative in coffee, cocoa, and vanilla, for example, we can be the part solution of the world. So in Kadin, we have this reset. We want to implement, and our members willing to invest. We invest to doing regenerative agriculture. And this is going well now. And this year, we have 10 companies in Kadin members. We are doing the pilot. Of course, we need the champion or this. And this pilot will be implement regenerative agroforestry. And I hope maybe next COP, we can come with the result. Ongoing project in the ground, and how can Indonesia give a solution for FOLU and for netting in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ade. We heard that now Kadin is Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. Will encourage his member, at least 10 members already in a pilot for regenerative business using the for example, multi-business forestry. So I think it is very, very good for us to wait until what the result of the pilot for in agroforestry with the several commodities initiated by the Kadin. Okay, thank you, Pak. We'll talk about this later on. Next, I would like to invite the last speaker, Ms. Lucita Yasmin, the Director for Sustainability and External Affairs of April. Please, Ms. Jasmine, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Zarul. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm really pleased to be on this panel. We'll try our best to project so that we can all hear each other. So I'm here to represent a private sector perspective in terms of how we've come to integrate conservation of nature in our business model, and of course how our approach to investing in nature has evolved over the years. So there are a few slides that I'd like to share with you just to go through quickly. But maybe for the benefit of everyone, just to give you a bit of an introduction. So April Group is one of the largest producers of fiber-based products. By that we mean pulp, paper, viscose for textile or clothing, and also paperboard for packaging. All our products are from 100% plantation wood, and we operate large-scale plantation forestry and manufacturing operations in the province of Riau in Indonesia. Next slide, please. We have adopted a no deforestation policy since 2015, and this is part of a broader policy framework that we call our Sustainable Forest Management Policy. And apart from no deforestation, we are also committed to responsible management of peatlands, and of course, increased commitment to conservation and restoration. and community engagement. And all of these is underpinned by a robust framework of verification and third-party assurance. Now, the policy applies to our supply chain, which includes 80% of our fiber supply comes from our owned and managed operations, and about between 15 and 20% comes from third-party supplies. Next, please. So, in terms of our relationship with nature and our approach to nature conservation, I think the important thing to recognize first and foremost is that nature is intrinsic in the type of sector where we operate. It's a resource-based industry. We've come to recognize that the long-term viability of our plantations actually depend on the long-term or overall health of the ecosystem or the larger ecosystem in which we operate. And I think for the longest time, and mainly because of the Western narrative, our sector has been cast in what I would consider as a hard line, if not a false dichotomy, that if you're in the forestry sector, you can produce, but you cannot protect, right? So our challenge basically is to come up with a model that demonstrates that we can integrate both production and protection in our operations, while at the same time delivering socioeconomic benefits. We need to recognize that we operate in a developing economy. And in ASEAN alone, we have about 120 million people that are still living below poverty line. In Indonesia, that number would be about 26 million. So there is still a development imperative that we need to respond to, while at the same time also addressing climate and nature imperatives, and of course the whole economic development that we need to deliver. Next slide, please. So part of this broader policy framework that we adopted is, of course, our increased commitment to conservation, which is also an illustration of our production protection model. You would all recall that under the Global Biodiversity Framework, the target is actually to conserve 30% of our marine and terrestrial ecosystems by 2030. Since 2015, we've had a commitment to conserve a hectare of natural forest for every hectare of plantation that we've established. So effectively, that's a 50% by 2030, if not sooner. So that's how more or less we're aligned with the global commitments on nature. We operate about 1 million hectares of concession areas granted by the Indonesian government. And of these, about 450,000 hectares have been established into plantations. And currently, we have about 360,000 hectares of conservation and restoration areas. So that brings us to about 80% of that commitment. And of course, we're hoping to fulfill it to 100% in the coming years. Next, please. Now, apart from conserving some high conservation value areas within our production concessions, we've also moved into adopting a huge restoration commitment through a license, a 60-year license that's been granted by the Indonesian government. And so we are now currently protecting and managing 150,000 hectares of peatland restoration areas, also in the province of Riau. So in this area, based on biodiversity surveys that we've conducted, we know that there are more than 800 species that call this area a home. We call it the Restorasi Ecosystem Riau, or Riau Ecosystem Restoration Project. And also from our survey, we know that the area houses close to 400 million tons of CO2 equivalent, meaning that's avoided emissions in this particular area. So this, I guess, circles back to the point that Ibu Kuki made earlier, which is the co-benefit of investing in nature, which is carbon and the rest of the ecosystem services that it delivers to the surrounding communities. Next, please. In 2022, in 2020, we adopted our April 2030 commitment. And what it means is that basically we decided to move from just mitigating the negative impact of our operations to actually adopting a more forward-looking commitment to sustainability for the next 10 years. And under April 2030, we have 4 pillars of commitment across climate, nature, people, and sustainable growth, where we also have about 18 measurable targets. Under climate, we are committed to achieve net zero emissions from land use by 2030, to reduce product emissions intensity by 25%, and to improve the share of renewable energy in our energy balance by up to 90% in our manufacturing operations and up to 50% in our forestry operations. The key point to make here is that we chose to adopt a holistic approach to our 2030 sustainability commitments. Instead of just adopting isolated commitments for climate or for nature, we recognize the interdependencies across, that we cannot also just set targets for nature in isolation without looking at, for example, some of our commitments to socioeconomic empowerment of the local communities. Under inclusive progress, for example, we also have a commitment to eliminate extreme poverty up to 50 kilometers from our concession boundaries. Because if we do not recognize that one of the socioeconomic, or one of the drivers of forest degradation, for example, is socioeconomic pressure, and if we do not address that part, then we are also not then mitigating some of the threats to nature conservation in Indonesia. So it's really important to see the dependencies across the different targets. Next, please. So now zeroing in on our thriving landscapes or nature commitments. So here we have a commitment to zero net loss of conservation and restoration areas by 2030. And at the same time, beyond just ensuring that we are able to protect what we have, we are also able to enhance the biodiversity that we are protecting within the area. So we have a target for achieving positive biodiversity gains as well. Now, here's again an example of dependency. One of the ways that we can achieve zero net loss of conservation areas and also positive biodiversity gains is by ensuring that we do not anymore increase our plantation footprint underground. So regardless of how much we increase our fiber supply requirement or how much we grow the business, we need to source our fiber supply from the same plantation footprint that we have. So we have a target for improving our productivity by 50% by 2030. So, and we're going to do this through sustainable intensification, land optimization, and through a science-based approach or through research and development into growing more from the same land bank. 60% of our land bank is on peatlands, so we have a responsibility to ensure that we have a science-based approach to responsible peatland management and that we contribute to the global understanding on tropical peatlands as well. And then finally, another target that's nature-related is ensuring we are able to protect the wildlife in the areas that we manage from the threats of illegal trade and poaching. And this we do through a partnership with the Wildlife Conservation Society. Next, please. So coming back to the role of private sector in financing nature conservation, I think we can track how this has evolved in the case of April. So first is, of course, one is direct funding from the shareholders. In 2015 in COP, our shareholder pledged $100 million funding to conservation and restoration for 10 years. But then we needed to go beyond that because we cannot just be dependent on shareholder enlightenment or shareholder benevolence to ensure that we have funding for our conservation commitments. So that's how then we evolved this integrated approach called production protection model, which means protection is built into the business itself. It's part of what we planned for, it's part of our targets, it's part of our budget cycle on a yearly basis. But then when we did our 2030 agenda, we also adopted a unique commitment, which is actually about adopting a self-tariff for conservation. So right now we have a target of committing $1 for every ton of fiber supply that goes into the mill. So what that means is that on a yearly basis, we have between $10 million and $15 million that's allocated or committed to conservation restoration on a yearly basis. So since 2020, from its adoption, we have had about $47 million that's been allocated. And this we spend both for our initiatives, our own conservation initiatives, but also for partnerships with other conservation groups. And then finally, of course, we also have our sustainability-linked loans, which I think Noor from ADB mentioned earlier. We closed close to $1 billion of sustainability-linked loan in 2020 as well. And basically, this is with a consortium of banks. And there are 3 KPIs, one of which has to do with our investment in nature. So basically what it means is that if we invest in nature, it also has financial impact, because if we meet our KPI in our sustainability-linked loans, it has some impact on the interest rates that we pay as a company. So that's how we demonstrate that sustainability now is really close to generating financial impact as well. And then, of course, we're looking to invest more. We're looking for more ecosystem restoration licenses and other areas, conservation areas, that we can either manage directly or in partnerships with other conservation groups. And finally, of course, there's all this discussion. Well, there is already the potential carbon revenue. The RER project that we mentioned earlier is a verified project document, and subject to, of course, further clarity of Indonesian regulations and compliance, full compliance with Indonesian regulations on carbon trade. Then there is a potential of generating revenue that could be plowed back into conservation as well. And then, of course, there's the prospect of biodiversity credit, which is very nascent right now. Nobody knows how exactly it's going to happen, how it's going to be measured, what metric. But the prospect is still there, and that is another possibility of generating potential revenue that can be invested back in nature. So these are all the options that we're looking at for, as a private sector, into this investment in nature conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Lusita, for this explanation about how April are turning commitment into practices, and also of how promoting ecosystem restoration, and also creating more funding and investment in the nature. So before I do second round of the question, I would like to invite from the floor one of the youth to have say about the issue of investing in the nature. I invite Mas Oka Fahru Hidayat, the Vice Chairman of Garda Pemuda Nasdem. Please.
Hello. Hello, my name is Oka Fahru Hidayat. I'm from Indonesia. I'm actually from youth movement, Nasdem Youth Movement organization. So it's all of the presentation is very, very good. We have the real financing from ADB, real movement from Ibu Mukti, and the 10 companies from Kadin is already done the regenerate commodity agriculture project. And then from the April, they have a $1 commitment to conserve from inside and outside their company. But the real question that I want to ask here is there any really green financer, like it's company thing, or it's community thing, or it's NGO thing, or it's our from village government thing? Maybe because we have in the ministry, we have the Perhutanan Sosial project that kelompok tani and village government can approach, can have it, but they always have a problem with the financing. We have some projects in internal, that Moringa project in Banyuwangi with community, but we can't find a real financer because we don't know from where we start. Is it okay from political party or youth movement? Is it okay from the community itself or NGO maybe? Or we need the village government, because it's if government based, it's more reliable and more reputable, right? So that's one I ask. Well, I want to ask. The second project we have in Samosir is a pine plantation. We have also from the Perhutanan Sosial, but we have the problem of the financing. We also get captured with the UU Ciptaker that have multi-purpose project that also in Perhutanan Sosial provide. How we can do this to make the volunteering better and the community can move and not only the big we already hear this from the big company, we don't hear from the small one. There's no small movement, but we need the more small action like in the village, in the kabupaten, in the area that really have financing problem, because if we talk in the big conference like this, if we talk in the national level, it's not a big thing. Financing is not a big thing, but in the lower level, it's a really big thing. So from Bu Mukti perspective, that we need to learn to how to make the good proposal and the financing reliable proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Masoka. So, as you already heard, that even though there are some best practices on the ground, but still some challenges at the local level, at the social forestry level, there's something that need for financing mechanism over there. So I would like to have your response for the issue, and I would like to first invite Mr. Nurullah to have your suggestion about this situation, a part of the blended or sustainable link loan and so on. Please.
Pertinent question, actually. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Now we can hear you. Please, go on.
Okay. No, I said thank you for putting me on the spot for this very important question. I fully agree that the movement towards green financing needs to be broader and needs to be more inclusive, and financing needs to be made available to SMEs, village level entrepreneurs, and so on. And that's not the case today. I think one of the things that we are seeing in the work that we do in the food and ag space is that the big corporates can act as an anchor to support green practices by smallholder farmers. So, for instance, the example that I shared of DSNG, while our loan is to the corporate DSNG, but the company through our financing is able to support small growers who practice agroforestry. And part of our financing is also going towards building up the capacity of these micro entrepreneurs at the village level. Another example is, we did a financing with a Singapore-based company named Indorama. They have operations in Uzbekistan where they work with smallholder farmers to grow cotton and wheat. Again, our financing is to the big corporate, to Indorama, but through our financing, they're working with smallholder farmers, giving them pre-financing in terms of, green fertilizers, resilient inputs, and then also guaranteeing the offtake to make sure that their livelihoods, the smallholder livelihoods, is protected and enhanced. So I think that's one of the channels to be able to support micro entrepreneurs, livelihoods of smallholder farmers, and give them access to financing indirectly. The other way to also do this is, so ADB also lends to financial institutions. And part of our sort of financing, climate financing to banks and insurance companies and microfinance banks is to be able to evaluate their lending practices and how they can incorporate green elements in their lending practices. So that's another channel to, because we are a wholesale lender, we can't directly lend to a micro enterprise. We don't have the presence in the field, in the villages. So we have to go through another intermediary like a bank, like a microfinance institution. So that's another channel through which we are trying to make capital available to micro entrepreneurs. I'll just stop there. Those are two examples I thought would be worth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nurullah. So we have heard that the microfinancing at the local level is important, but also the partnership with private sector is also one of the options. So I would like to have a response from Mbak Kuki. Quick, Mbak.
Yeah, thank you. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have big issues in the gap of knowledge, basically, between the financial institutions and activities on the ground. And I think that's what you already mentioned earlier. There are a number of initiatives by different, like the standards, for example, if you are talking about carbon, right? That has and can support that kind of small scale activities. And as I remember, under the MOEF regulation number 7 2023, there are also these elements of facilitators that can help such activities on the ground, especially for the small scale. So I think this is where we need to work together to make sure that the knowledge of both parties, I mean like the financiers as well as the project on the ground, can be somehow met in the middle, right? I mean like it's not only the project that need to develop bankable proposals. Even if you have the so-called bankable proposals, it may still need considered as bankable by the financial institution if they don't understand how your project will be, operated. So, yeah.
Thank you, Pak Uki. So capacity building is still also how one is important. So next, Pak Onde, how can you encourage your members to finance local initiatives like that?
We have several example of how working together with social forestry. So in Boyolali, Kadin and the local farmer group there working together. So first, Kadin invest in embung, water set, because the area of social forestry is drought. So we invest in embung, and then under the embung, we develop the agroforestry system. And Kadin members are willing to be a market for the product. So the financing come from BPDLH. So Kadin and BPDLH have a memorandum of understanding. So as long as Kadin members can serve with the market, BPDLH will financing the farmers. So this will be good. So Kadin come with the market and Kadin members, yeah, and then BPDLH financing, and of course the farmers have the land and the workers. So this is very good. And NGOs, our friends NGOs working with the social investment. They working with farmer, they build the organization, they build the cooperative and etc. And then we working together. So I think this is the collaboration when everybody come with their expertise. So this is very good, and I think we're going well on this. This is the first experience, example, how working together with the social forestry. The other part, we collaborate with Kadin members and the cooperative of people who have the social forestry license build one inclusive company together. So this company operate the agroforestry system. They're planting together, and the company come with the financing, but the land and the human resources come from the farmers. So this is a good example, yeah. And in Kadin, we are not only focused on big concession, but in Kadin we also have a social forestry part, and we want to create cooperative between big corporation and forestry.
Okay, thank you about that. So we heard that the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce together with the Indonesian Environmental Fund work together to provide financing at the upstream level, and then the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce becoming the off-takers for the products produced by the farmers. Ibu Lucita, so what's April done in terms of this partnership?
Sure, thank you. That's really a huge challenge, yeah, because we do recognize that capacity building among local communities, and not just local communities, but also even big conservation NGOs, in terms of really having some long-term funding certainty as well for some of their conservation initiatives. So what our company has initiated is what we call our Community Conservation Partnership. So basically what we do is through a participatory land use process, we map the areas for production and also for conservation with some of the participating villages. And then we sign into an agreement with them that if they do maintain the conservation of some of these areas within their villages, then we give them an incentive of up to 10,000 livelihood development, financing some of their sustainable agriculture, or also for social infrastructure. It could be a bridge, a daycare, a new mosque, a school, depending on what the communities themselves decide on. So we just started this about a year ago, and we currently cover 35,000 hectares in Riau, and about 5 villages have already signed up. This is very exploratory at this point. We know it's a very rudimentary way of actually quantifying payment for the ecosystem services or for the natural capital that the communities are actually helping us to conserve. But currently, that is the only way, the only mechanism that we are able to implement as we learn exactly how to incentivize the communities. But I mentioned capacity building is not just also for the local communities, but also for the other conservation organizations. Many of the some of the ERC concession holders or restoration concession holders in Indonesia are also needing support because many of them are conservation NGOs. They're not land managers, they're not business developers. So for them to come up with a business case for maintaining their restoration and conservation area is a huge challenge. They don't have that skill set. So basically what they do is that they're coming to us for potential partnership, for us to be able to offer technical, operational, and funding support to help them manage some of their conservation initiatives and also some of their restoration areas. So there is some capacity building that happens through, of course, our operational capabilities that we share with them, which means it goes beyond just funding. As private sector, it needs to really be about being engaged in the whole range of the capacity building exercise that needs to happen so that they can build their own business case and eventually really then be able to fund and earn, like meaningful, sustainable revenue from the conservation itself.
Thank you, Bu Lucita, for explaining how April has been done and has been doing in terms of the cooperation with the local people, as well as trying to scale up your works in restoration, ecosystem restoration. Next, I would like to invite floors to have their says about the investment in nature and how to finance, how to create a financial mechanism to ensure that our climate action, especially in Indonesian FOLU Netting 2030, will be implementable as well as achievable for the targets. Please, anyone want to? Yes, both of you. Please, ladies in that. Thank you.
Hi. So this could also be a question to the panel, but I feel like all of your ideas were really interesting. And what I've repeatedly heard about at this COP is adding the value, the monetary value of our biodiversity, it can be the ocean stuff or land stuff, into our balance sheet. So if there's a collaboration between public and private companies, you want the value of biodiversity preservation written into your balance sheets or your cash flow statements. And I've heard that this adds a lot of value in thinking about how these actually offer economic returns, even though we all think that they don't really offer returns, but they do. So yeah, that's one idea I've heard repeatedly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well at a later point.
Okay, next, maybe.
Hello, I'm Eka Permanasari. I'm from Monash University. I actually work a lot with the community, especially in the urban areas though. And this is really interesting because we also have some research in the new capital city. And of course, this is going to be something interesting for this one. Now, working with the community, as you mentioned, is really difficult. And it's really hard to maintain the sustainability mechanism, yeah? And I wonder, what are your strategies, yeah? On the field, I heard that you've got some pilot projects on the field to make sure that the community is actually always up to the game. Yeah, so I think that's something that I would like to know. I work for Air Petra in Jakarta. We start with 6 pilot projects and we scaled up to 298 in Jakarta. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. 2 questions. One is the value of biodiversity conservation and then the community issue. Who will be taking the first? Ibu Lucita, first.
Sure. You know, before this role, I was actually with the UN Environment Program. And at that time, there was already a discussion on the whole economics of ecosystems and biodiversity and how natural capital can be assessed. And now, of course, we're looking at, from a private sector perspective, doing assessments on climate-related risks, on financial impact, and also nature-related risks, right? TNFD and TCFD. But personally, I also am concerned that, we've gone so far in terms of adopting a triple bottom line approach, of really looking at it in terms of a balance between people, planet, and profit. And now everything is being seen from a singular materiality perspective. We want everything to have a financial impact. From a business perspective, okay, why is that the reason? Because, of course, otherwise it's just going to be looked at as a cost. And to begin with, not many companies even actually internalize that cost, right? So in our case, at least, there is a recognition because, of course, it's the nature of the business. We are a resource-based company. If we don't look after the natural resources, the viability of the plantations themselves would be at risk. But when companies do not recognize the impacts and dependencies that they have on nature, it's hard for them to then integrate this into their business model, right? So is it just a cost or does it also have a financial impact? From a business perspective, yes, I do need to make a case for why we should make that investment in nature. But to be honest, there are just some things that we need to do for the collective good. And once we transition from just really looking at corporate sustainability to stewardship, as in really maturing in terms of our approach to sustainability and doing things because it is really what the global consensus is saying as the urgency that we need to address right now, then we won't even need to get into a discussion on what is the value of all this, right? So yes, I see your point, but at the same time, from a pragmatic perspective, this is also the case, whether from an economic planning perspective at the national level or from a private sector perspective as well. Just on the question on, how do we sustain the partnership with the communities? The honest answer is we haven't figured that out, right? Because prior to the community conservation partnership, we've had what we call the Fire-Free Village program. And that program has been running for 10 years now. Same model, that we sign up an agreement with the communities during the fire season, they don't burn. We provide them with an alternative means to clear the land for agricultural purposes because we do recognize they need to have sustainable livelihood. And then we also give them a reward if they don't burn. Now, ultimately, of course, our objective is behavior change. A change in mindset, an understanding that nature is worth, or the forest is worth more standing than converted into oil palm or other commodities for that matter, right? But it's a long-term process. The incentive is only to get them engaged. And then eventually, of course, it's about being able to to find a way to have a sustainable mechanism for them to continue with the livelihood opportunities without resorting to the bad practices, right? And in the meantime, we provide that. And while we're there in the landscape, we will continue to be engaged in that way. But of course, the ultimate goal is that eventually there'll be the communities themselves will be empowered to make this choice, right? And I think right now that is still something that we're learning to do as we engage with the communities. It's a choice that proactively they need to make because of their own realization. We respect that, but right now, I think it's still very much a learning process for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Bu Lisita. So, any additional comment from other speakers? Please, Pak Ote.
In Kadin, there are so many company with different things and different experience. And I know we still learn how to make a sustainable cooperation with the community. And that's why I mentioned before about how to build the inclusive institution together. Yeah, we are the investor there and then the cooperative of people there. So the key the key is how to build the strong organization of people. Because if you can build a good cooperative, because if you deal with one-to-one person, it's very difficult for us. But if you deal with the organization, cooperative, with good mechanism, for example, for conflict resolution mechanism, for share benefit mechanism, this will be good. So this we try to build. First, of course, we build the cooperative. We encourage them to build the cooperative. And the cooperative of these people will be part of our source for resources. So we usually thinking about that. And we try, yeah. And that's why I mentioned about the social forestry. They plan something, we try to financing, but the result of the community will be our sources. So we need the sources, but we want to take hand from start, not waiting until people have a good community and then we buy. No, but we want to start with zero together. So we have planned together, we build the organization together. So of course, I agree with Ibu Lucy, this is a long way to go, but at least now we explore all the possibility, all the good, inclusive and collaborative model in Indonesia to do the good things for us.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ote. Any suggestion or from Mr. Nur about this issue?
Yeah, just I think one quick thought in terms of community engagement. I think one of the real hooks in our experience is if you can engage the community in a livelihood activity that enhances their livelihoods and makes them more resilient in terms of not only climate, but also in terms of market fluctuation, pricing fluctuation, so on and so forth. So one of the investments that ADB made in 2019, in fact, we approved it, and then later during COVID, we made a follow-on transaction with the same company in India. It's the largest poultry company in India named Suguna Foods. And the company works with around 40,000 smallholder poultry farmers across India. And, the company provides day-old chicks to these farmers, helps them set up their pens, support them in terms of what feed to provide, the monitoring, etc., and then also offtakes the produce. And we recently did a study on the work that Suguna Foods has done, and it concluded that the farmers that work with Suguna Foods as contract farmers, are significantly better off in terms of incomes than farmers who are not part of the Suguna Foods network. And there's very limited churn in their network because of the benefit that the company is able to offer in terms of, offtake and reliability. So if you, a bottom line being, if you are able to engage the community in a livelihood activity and you are able to sustain it over a long period of time, I think that's really the hook around which you can do a lot more in terms of capacity building and so on and so forth. Um, and as Lucetta mentioned, this is a long-term process. This is not, in 2 crop cycles or 2 years that you have to be there, for years and years to be able to develop that trust and continue to pass on those benefits to the communities to build that real relationship with the community. So I thought that was one pertinent example worth sharing on this point. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Nullah. Any thoughts from Mbak Kuki?
Yeah, maybe just to add a bit because Ms. Lucita earlier also mentioned about the scope 3, right? So I think one way in having such of sustainability is to have this interdependency between the company and the farmers or the local community, so that they, like even without, maybe like how do you call it, like support, it will become like a real business case rather than just support, right? Because then interdependency, the company need like reliable and low or no carbon emission supply, while from the other side, the farmers, they need to ensure that they can provide that, because otherwise they will be, outside the game.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Kuki. So we learn from here that the working with the community is not easy, but it is work. Okay, it is working in several cases, and also it is challenging, yes, but there are options also to to uh, to make it working. So I think we can see more option to be implemented in several different cases. Then we will be able to run, or we will able to implement our program on the ground successfully. So do we still have time? I think we do. Um, another time. So I'm opening also one more round of the Q&A. If there is a question or sharing information or whatever you would like to share, no? Then with that, we are now at the end of this session. And I would like to thank all the speakers, the distinguished speakers, Mr. Noor, Mbak Kuki, Pak Onte, and Ibu Lucita, for the great sharing session. And hopefully we can get the lesson learned from all we have discussed a while ago. Thank you very much, and applause for all the speakers and all of us. Thank you.